problem. They will not just release it, 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 release it. Not just release it, 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 release it.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to this special election edition of Release It. We started last Thursday evening, and we continue this week, and of course, right up until the 16th of June. Of course, election will be the following week, the 23rd of June. We welcome you. We're very happy to have you, and of course, we welcome our listeners on K105 FM and also our viewers on the GBN's Facebook page and YouTube channel. This evening, folks, Dr. Augustine Panchoo is back with me, my homeboy. Always such a pleasure. And of course, our guest this evening, Mr. William Joseph, a gentleman who has followed the politics in Grenada to the T. And so I think it is fitting, the title of political analyst is quite fitting. Let's welcome Mr. Joseph. Mr. Joseph, good evening and welcome to Release It.
Well, I thank you. Most generous. I didn't expect all that generosity, but I thank you so much, and I say good evening to Dr. Panchoo and also to your audience. Blessings.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, thank you. Dr. Panchoo, welcome again. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Godfrey, for having me. It's a pleasure to be able to meet the man himself, Willie, known throughout Grenada for his valid commentary and his stance on all things, including politics.
Oh, definitely. As you said that, I was listening to a rally, I think it was last Sunday, and our Prime Minister made reference to him and some of his writings. You know, I was quite pleased. I was quite pleased, But nevertheless, folks, this evening we're looking at election, and we want to do some analysis of the election. Of course, maybe looking back at some of the previous results. Look at what is happening now, and probably try and analyze where it might be difficult, but that's why we have Dr. Panchoo here to take us maybe into the minds of the electorate to probably try and figure out beforehand what may or may not happen. Yeah. So we promise to have a lively discussion this evening, and a little later on the program, of course, we'll be opening our telephone lines and looking forward to hearing from you with your contributions as well. So let's start with Mr. Joseph. Mr. Joseph, election will be on June 23rd. 2 weeks and a couple of days from now, we'll be going to the polls, either to return the new National Party into office or to putting a new government, the National Democratic Congress. Or you never know. Well, no, I don't think the GULP can have it. They don't have enough candidates, neither. Right.
Yeah, I don't think they have enough.
Yeah, they don't have enough. So either way, I think.
But a combination may work.
Combination. It worked. It worked in 1990.
Yeah.
Yes. Remember in 1990 and seats, and so someone
teamed up with Ed Zealand.
Yes, right. So you never know what may or may not happen. But Mr. Joseph, so we are here. The campaign is in full swing. In fact, as we speak, I think there is a meeting taking place at St. Mark, Alston George Park in St. Mark right now. The New National Party is having a meeting there, and of course, I'm not sure where the NDC is this evening, but of course on the weekend there are more public, big rallies and everything like that. But as it is now, looking at what we're seeing, clearly the NDC has gotten some renewed energy. They now have a political leader. They have 15 candidates, and they seem to be, quite excited, energized, and probably ready to take power. On the other hand, the NNP, they are asking people, listen, look, keep Grenada in safer hands. NDC says we're going to take Grenada forward. Safer hands, moving forward. Mr. Joseph, let's get your opening comments on these two slogans or punchlines.
Well, thank you, and I trust you will forgive me if I don't immediately comment on the slogans. but I trust you that I do intend to do so a little later. So you haven't set the table as ably as you have. Please, I just want to situate my own napkin, as it were. Now, for me, these elections, in summary, are about judgment and the future. Judgment and the future. So that is to put it in a very stark way. These are no ordinary elections. These elections come to us as a Grenadian people at a time when our nation is on the crossroads in many significant ways. So there are opportunities for our country at this time through these elections. I would just point out 5 of them, if you don't mind. I think we have an opportunity to deal seriously with poverty, which essentially has become an existential threat to our nation. And that's a serious matter for us to deal with. And then we have the question of preparing for the next 50 years of our independence. And when you say that, it means that we are going to have to concern ourselves about 2 things in the main. One is leadership, and the other is development, that is to say, social and economic development. But there are 2 other factors. One is what I would call a rediscovery of the Grenadian soul. That is involved in these elections. This nation has moved almost 50 years, drifting and so on, and we have not been very settled in our ways. And I think there's an opportunity now for us to, in a sense, rediscover this Grenadian soul, and in doing so, finally, for us to build the unity of the Grenadian people. So these, I think, are some of the opportunities that these elections pose in the context of the judgment that will be delivered by the voters and the future that they would choose to set up after June the 23rd. So just to continue a little bit. So I expect that we will discuss, as we go forward, a couple of things. There is a phenomenon, in my view, that I call the phenomenon of the rising star and the decline of a faded star. They are 2 opposites. There's something going on here. I am pointing to the leaders on both sides. And in the context of the leader of the NNP, I do not know that it is worthwhile for us to discuss his leadership credentials. I don't think so. But I think certainly we would need to reflect a little bit on his leadership creation. What has that leadership created for the Grenadian people? Then there is this. In terms of the contrast, there is the boldness of an energizing transformation agenda. And that is what the Congress people are attempting to sell us, as against a sort of well-known, dull, if you wish, transaction agenda, which is what, in my view, we are getting from the other side. So having exposed it that way, the slogans, well, if you say it's about moving forward in the context of transformation, then it seems to me that there's a concern about national welfare, about where we take this nation, given what has gone in the past. And in a sense, it is saying, in my view, that we are unhappy with what has happened with us over these last 50 years of independence, and we need to shift. We need to shift gears now and build new fortunes for our country. And the safer hand thing really has to do, I think, with a sort of singular purpose. We want to keep this thing in our hands because there's some personal prize going on there, and there are some group prize going on there, prizes, sorry. So the safer hand thing, I could understand it, but you will note, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little later, that it has engendered significant backlash. Significant backlash. So that's my opening salvo, if you will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Dr. Panchoo, you listened to Mr. Joseph. Your comments on some of the comments he made and your perspective on what is presently happening.
There is no question that there is a renewed energy that is happening, especially in the side of the NDC. As you drive around, you see people on the streets. They're moving with purpose. There are so many vehicles that are carrying placards and posters that maybe were not so evident in the last election cycle. So I agree with the Honorable Willie that there is a renewed energy and a renewed purpose. Let me quickly add. I want to agree with him when he, in his analysis of the safer hand concept. And he talked about the backlash. The backlash will show that if you're talking about safer hands, then you're talking about status quo, and that is a significant minus when it comes to propagating safer hands, because safer hands mean that my hand is already safe and I want it to continue to be safe, and so now it can be safer. But the backlash is, and I think the NDC is using it to their advantage in some ways, because they're talking about how the hands have failed. So in terms of the slogan, you have to be very careful. It's a little catchy, safer hands, but then the opposition uses it for their advantage to show that, well, really and truly, those hands haven't been so safe. Now the NDC, the slogan is moving forward. It's a very catchy one. There is no question about it, and it appeals to people. When you look at the human psyche, we always want bigger and better. We want more. We want to improve, and so moving forward tells a story that wherever I am, whatever I have, I want it to become bigger and better.
Thank you, Dr. Panchoo. Let me just come in here and maybe challenge you gentlemen and spark a little bit of insight here. Safer hands. I am getting the feeling from both you gentlemen, when you speak of safer hands, there seems to be an undertone that we're referring here to Dr. Mitchell himself. Compared to when we speak of moving forward, we're speaking of the NDC. I'm getting that undertone there. Mr. Joseph?
Well, yes, and it is so, because culturally, as you know, success in the politics depends on the leader, and the NNP cannot argue that its success has largely been on account of the leader himself. But the safer hand notion also has to do with this whole question of one for the road. I can't get that one for the road unless I could sell that these hands are safe, that I have the safer pair of hands going forward. Okay, I'm the principal catcher, I'm the principal collector, I'm the principal distributor. And therefore, one cannot separate the slogan from the personality and the persona and if you will, the entire identity of the leader of the NNP. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I agree with what you say, but then on the other hand, why then that moving forward does not speak specifically to the leader of the NDC and the NDC as an organization then?
Yeah, because Deacon Mitchell is not yet established. He's not yet established. He's now transitioning from party leader to national leader. So he does not have an account as such. Mm-hmm. You see, so he has the position, and remember how they've done this. They have the overlay is the transformation agenda. So if it is going to be transformational, it must imply that they are concerned about pushing the envelope. Implicit also in that is this whole concept of change. So it goes in two directions. The political thing about, because we're in elections, that's a judgment issue, change from these people, and also change for the purpose of transforming our nation. That's the moving forward idea. So it surrounds, I don't know if they've done it, if they did it deliberately, if they did, of course, all kudos to them. But I think in analyzing it, one can reasonably draw these conclusions.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment, Dr. Panchoo?
Well, I think it is instructive to note that in his pronouncement, One for the Road speaks specifically to the political leader of the NNP. There's no question about that. Because as of now, he may be the only one that is declaring that this is his last election cycle. Mm-hmm. So as the political leader and as the engine and the catalyst that propelled the NNP to 15-0 and 5 election winning of national election within the last 6 cycles. He's putting himself, because remember this one he declared that this is his legacy. He's establishing his legacy. So he's asking of the Grenadian people, give him one for the farewell. This is his farewell. You understand? Mm-hmm. So it's more about him. It would sound and seem to suggest that it is about him. Now we have to now see if the Grenadian voting population will establish his legacy and give him one for the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my follow-up to this, even if
Godfrey,
that slogan was not used before, one for the road, but clearly his dominance as a leader,
yes,
that has worked. He's often referred to as the maximum leader. Mm. He runs things, and that has definitely worked for him for his years in politics. Yeah. One for the road, will that change? The fact that he been the maximum leader for so many years, will that change this time around? Are we feeling any change?
I don't know that I'm feeling any change. I think the slogan is speaking volumes, and you're right. When you look at the statistics, I think we cannot negate the statistics of the last 2 election cycles, and his dominance as a parliamentarian. Okay, think of it, and then so there is a sort of establishment already of a legacy for him, and he is now appealing, and I think it's going to work for him. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to work for him.
Mr. Joseph, let's come in here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to jump in. I am intrigued by the reference to the electoral history between these two parties. I think we should take a moment to look at them closely. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, when you do so, you see a couple of things. that over about 4 or so of these elections, either party won by narrow majorities, except the blowout years. Listen to me, except the blowout years, 1999, 2013, and 2018. So let us pause there to understand what operated on the minds of voters at those 3 election cycles. In 99, there was a situation where the NDC, Raphael Fletcher collapsed the NNP regime, blah, blah, quick, so they had to rush to the elections, of course. The NDC at the time was in disarray, and therefore the electorate could not buy that ticket. So that's the first thing. Underline the word disarray. You come to 2013, the second blowout, and the operative condition at that time was something called division. And we know the history of that division thing. I am sorry this other guy didn't come so we could talk about it. He's the one who announced it to the world. That division thing that afflicted the NDC, and therefore you could not stand, the electorate would not vote a party that had so openly engaged in divisive politics, and the government itself. It ate itself up. So, there was nothing for us to buy there other than the NNP. And the third one in 18, what you had there, and some of my friends in the NDC are generally not happy when I make this point, but it is true. The operative condition in 18 was a deep dislike of the NDC leader at that time. So a degrading of the NDC was in effect. So every time you had the blowout, there were unique conditions operating to account for the outcomes. Other than that, these 2 parties, it's narrow margins. You remember even in 08 when the NDC won 11-4, the difference was hardly 2,000 votes across Grenada.
1,800 votes. 18, yes, 1,800 votes.
That's right. That's right. So it is telling us that when this thing gets back on even keel, as appears to be the case in 22 this year, it is presenting a different scenario. And I want to talk a little later about some of this stuff that really surprised me, because in my view, I don't think that the NNP really analyzed these things carefully. Dr. Panchoo talked about the resurgence, and that is one of the factors that, to me, that they've ignored. And there are some others, and I would want to touch them a little later, but that's a comment I wanted to make on this question of the electoral history.
Before we go to the break, Dr. Panchoo, Mr. Joseph mentioned a number of things, which is correct. The disarray from 99, division in 2013, and of course a dislike for the leader in 2018. Yeah. But it would seem, and I think it is the view of quite a lot of people, that these people are still around, still in the background. I was listening to a program a couple Sundays ago, and one of the leaders of the NDC, when asked, for example, about experience, about this new team, reference was made to other people can also come in to play a leadership or a governing role. And I'm wondering about that. We are still seeing some of the old guards. And when you look at the NDC's history, generally the old guards are the one who seem to be behind the disarray and the division. And they are still around. You are still seeing them on the platform. Not that you do not need the experience and the support of all. But, there are people who are wondering what will happen if the NDC can pull off the 2022 election. Dr. Panchoo, your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think they are doing the NDC is doing a disservice to itself by having the former leader take such a frontal role in the rallies. I think they are doing a disservice to themselves. And I agree with Mr. Joseph that of every time there was a blowout, there was a significant national reason, a national phenomenon that propelled the NNP to a 15-0 win. This election cycle, at this time, we have to say it like this, at this time there appears to be no extraordinary circumstances that will propel a similar situation. So maybe we're on an even keel. We are going to take people for who they are and what they can bring. And people are listening. I think people are listening in this election cycle. I think people are listening. And one of the strengths of the NDC is the town hall meetings where people actually, where the environment is void of a lot of noise and people can pay attention and listen. And I think that's a strength of the NDC.
Okay, Mr. Joseph, I just want to go back a bit. From 2008, when NDC won the election 11 seats to 4, as you rightly said, they only won that election by 1,800 votes practically. The division came and they lost some 6,000 because they amassed a total of 29,000 votes compared to the NNP with their 4 seats very close at 27,000 votes. So just a little under 2,000. So it's a very close election. In 2013, NDC moved back, and of course we understand what happened there, the division. They moved back from 29,000 to 22,000 votes, losing some 6,800 votes to the NNP. NNP increased their votes, and that was expected to about 32,000. In 2018, there was something very instructive there, that the NDC was not able to win back the votes that they lost from the 2008 election. So they remained at their 23,000 votes, but also importantly, the NNP did not make any significant move themselves. They were only able to, in fact, NDC in 2018, they got 1,089 more votes than the previous election, and the NNP about 1,700 more votes, a little more than the NDC. But generally speaking, neither of the parties was able to gain any significant number of votes, and so it practically remained the same as 2013. What this says to me is that the people who voted for the NDC, that difference between the 22,000 and that 29,000, in 2018, the NDC was not able to win back the confidence of these people, and of course you said one of the reasons being the dislike for the leader then. My question is, in 2022, do you think the NDC, with what is happening now, will be able to finally regain the confidence of these people and be able to mount a serious challenge to the NNP?
All right, yes, that's an important question. So we need to be very careful, at least I do, in terms of my comments on it. Let me begin, though, by drawing the distinction between division, which is what we had in 2013, and disaffection or displeasure or even disgruntlement, some of which we've had since Deacon's election back in November last year. So there is that. It is not division now at all. It is something entirely different, because division occurs or exists where you have entrenched groups pressing an interest. And typically it is to take something that another group has. And back in 2013, it was an attempt to take the power away from Tillman Thomas and put it elsewhere. So I've just put it very crudely. Now, this question of who is appearing on the NDC platform and some fair degree of concern with respect to whether some of these people might play a role and the symbolism of the thing. Now, it's a delicate issue because one would remember the NDC's new leadership had no time to consolidate itself before talk of elections hit the air. They had the convention at the end of October, I believe, and by the time we had gotten to December, there was talk about elections in Grenada. So they were still finding their way. And therefore, for me, it was important for them to try to unite themselves. I would see it that way and put it that way. You know, there's a price for everything in life, even the good things that we do and enjoy. So there might be people who might frown on the fact that they saw the last leader of the NDC on the platform, and I think on one occasion he spoke and so on, but he spoke in a certain context, in a seat that he had been very popular in, even though he lost twice, but he did win twice, and a seat that the NDC absolutely needs to win. So there is no doubt that he would have personal following in that constituency, if not nationally, but definitely in that constituency. So I could see what they're trying to do. There's a certain amount of risk involved, yes, but I understand what they're trying to do, and I don't think that is going to cost them significantly in that respect. Now, this question of governance and composing the team and so on to do so. I anticipate, I hope, personally, that we look outside, if the NDC were to win, that they look outside of themselves and find a few people whom they could bring into the cabinet. I'm not talking about party people. I'm talking about good Grenadian caliber people who have expertise in certain areas and who are prepared to serve the country in the context of a transformation agenda. Because we have been crippled by this, the dominance of the political parties. Almost we've had this dictatorship of the political parties. So what has happened with us as a society is that the limitations of the parties have become the limitations of the society. And it's not fair to us at all. There are other Grenadians who are not in party politics, who, in my view, are well able, many of them, to contribute in the cabinet of the country to help this thing, to help us move forward. So I think I carry a very broad mind on this question, I think in the national interest, so to speak. Now, so this issue of those numbers 2018, yeah, and into 2022. So we must look at who it is that stayed home in 2018.
Yeah.
There are a very large number, high number of people who stayed home, opted not to participate in the vote. 22 or so thousand. Now you discount, some who might have died, discount the Jehovah's Witnesses who don't vote, discount some people who might have been abroad. And I would imagine that there must have been well over 15,000 people who were available to vote and consciously decided not to vote. Now, why? Who are they and why? I think that we could say a couple of sensible things. One is that people who are intending, who vote NNP go out and vote. So I am inclined to think that that 15 or so thousand people were not going to be voting the NNP. If I am correct, then it means that the NDC was an option that they looked at and then they said no. Why did they say no? Because they continue to be unhappy with the leader, principally the leader of the NDC. Now, who are they? Who are they? They're the three sets of Grenadians, I believe, that didn't vote. Some young people, some working class people, and some middle-class people. All of these Grenadian citizens were people who command a certain degree of intelligence and sat down, weighed the thing, and decided, I ain't taking part in this because I'm not happy. I'm not going to be voting NNP at all, but I'm not happy with the NDC. Now, one of the things that surprised me in this cycle that we have on our hands now, that from the time Deacon Mitchell was elected leader of the NDC, we began to, remember, he was not known nationally, but there was, listen, the resurgence began with the very election of this gentleman, even in the minds and mouths of people who didn't know him. What was it telling you? It was saying to us that, listen, there are people who are opposed to the NNP, are prepared to work, meaning to support the NDC. They have now resolved their leader problem. Remember, after 99, what happened? The 99 blowout left the NDC on the ground. It was like a chicken without a head. Brizan gone, Alexis gone. The NNP wiped out the entire headship of the NDC. And so come 2000, you found the NDC moving to accept leadership from the remnants of the revolution. I don't mean it in a negative way as such. Fellas who had been in the revolution and so on, the second-tier fellas, we know them all. Why were they doing so? I had doubted whether that could work. I said so openly back then. But when I sat down in my home that evening, they had the convention and I saw it on the television, and I saw some good quality Grenadians hug and embrace these guys, I had to think deeply. And the answer came to me that, listen, these people want leadership for their party. And they couldn't care two hoots whether these guys were Codites or whateverites. They were getting leadership for their party. And I think we are seeing that very thread again in 2022 through Deacon Mitchell and the resurgence that his election has brought to the NDC. So it's going to play on these three sets of people. And if you look at the followings of their public events, and you look at who is there. Look at who is there, who's coming off the shelf, and including, of course, new, meaning young voters, and you begin to get a picture of things. That is why, and I'll shut up after this point, that is why you could go to Tempe on last Sunday. And if you had gone there in 2008, the year that the NDC won, and you went there last Sunday, you see something that would have blown your mind. The sheer numbers. The sheer numbers. It is telling you something, and is one of those things that I think the NNP did not evaluate well. And it surprises me. So let me shut up at this point.
Okay, great. But Dr. Panchoo, before you comment, we need to take a short break and then we'll come back. So stay with us, folks. Don't go away. We have a lot more in store for you.
Yeah.
You under pressure, you under stress, a lot of problem. They on your chest. You under pressure, you under stress, a lot of problem. They on your chest.
The most anticipated family fun-filled event on the GBN calendar is back. The Maggie King of the Grill. Join us on June 4th at Mount Rouge. Be part of the culinary masterpiece as the best grillers on island compete for the coveted title of the Maggie King of the Grill. Think you have what it takes? Be part of the action. June 4th. Book your spot. If not, step away from the grill if you can't handle the heat. Maggie King of the Grill is sponsored by Maggie, Matuk's Barbecue Sauce, Rubis, Dasani Water, Calico Shopping Center, Duty Free Caribbean, and Siesta Hotel. Distributed by Calico Trading, Frequency St. George's. Telephone number 439-9239.
Feel good facts.
Help prevent cold and flu by washing your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. That's the time it takes to remove most germs. No soap and water? No worries when you've got alcohol-based hand sanitizer.
Welcome back, everyone. It's our Thursday evening edition of Release It, a special election edition. Mr. William Joseph is our guest, together with Dr. Augustine Panchoo, and we're basically analyzing what is happening, to make some more sense of it. Those of you just joining us, we welcome you. We're also live on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as on K105 FM. Dr. Panchoo, your comments on some of the remarks that Mr. Joseph made.
Well, I tell you something. I listened attentively to Mr. Joseph's analysis on the leadership issue and how he perceived the NDC when they were needing leaders and in their quest, and now that they seem to have a leader, young, vibrant, intelligent, well-spoken individual at the leadership level. And he's correct. I remember that from the moment he was announced the leader, there was a rush on Facebook of people seemingly from everywhere who was saying, aha. It's like it was eureka. We've found it. We've found him. We've found someone that people can gravitate to, that they can look forward to compete with the NNP, with the leadership of the NNP. Happenstance that his name is also a Mitchell. And I think leadership. Whereas one party has had a monopoly on the leadership, in all of his convention, there has never been anyone to vie for the leadership position, and here it is. The NDC has opened up an opportunity for people to vie for the leadership of their party. It has worked well for the NNP and the NDC, even though there was some friction in relation to how party members felt about the election of Deacon. It seemed to have been in a democratic way that they were able to elect him, and so it behooves us now to put the two together, okay, and that's the opportunity I think the voting population has to deal with in this election cycle, to look at leadership from the one that asks for the road, and the one that says, let's transform what we have in Grenada and move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Panchoo. But I want to posit something else here, Mr. Joseph and Dr. Panchoo. We have to also remember, and I totally agree with you, that there was a resurgence after Mr. Dickon Mitchell was announced as leader of the NDC. But we have to also remember that the NDC was coming from a position of serious healing. They faced 2 humiliating defeats, and there were thousands of despondent NDC supporters. They had nothing to look forward to. They didn't have a leader. They were just there. As you said earlier, headless. Could it be that the resurgence that we are now referring to has more to do with the despondent NDCites regaining or being re-energized by the new leadership of the party as compared to a general resurgence of the Grenadian populace? Your thoughts, Mr. Joseph?
In the context of the party, there's an issue of cause and effect. Mm-hmm. There's this body of people who have been opposed to the NNP and their side of politics, essentially opposed to NNP government, and were unhappy for a period of time with their own leadership. And they were prepared simply to wait it out until happier circumstances arrived. So it's a cause and effect thing as far as I'm concerned. The question now is, to what extent let me put this differently. A resurgence of the Grenadian people is a slightly different issue. And that is one of the big issues when I talked about rediscovering the Grenadian soul at the top of the program. It is one of the big issues. And one can very well find that through this new leadership that the NDC is making available to Grenada, that as the NDC leader transitions from party leader to national leader, that very effect could be produced. Because why? We have not been as proud and as happy as a people as we desired, as we perhaps deserve to be, because we have been victims of not so good governance, not so good government, and so on over a long period of time. So we are entitled, in my view, to feel better if in fact we have a leader who is able to stir the passion in a very genuine way of the Grenadian people. Now, let's go and look at a picture on Sunday evening in Tempe. This young man, who must have been under 15 when Maurice Bishop became leader of Grenada and so on. And this young man draws on the spirit of Maurice Bishop, and something moves among the people. Now, we are not discussing the ills of the revolution. We are talking about the leader factor in our politics. And in that context, how we tend to give the leader breaks that you and I wouldn't get. They wouldn't hold it against Maurice for certain ills of the revolution. Why? Because he's a beloved leader. It's a cultural thing. We didn't hold certain things against Sir Eric for the very same reason. And those are the two that we crowned. We have not crowned anyone else as leader. So I think that in the wave of this Deacon phenomenon, leader phenomenon, that the entire Grenadian nation could begin to feel itself being proud again, standing on its feet. And you back that up now with a set of purposes, linking the vision that he has put out. It's not perfect, but it's positive. Let me repeat that. Not perfect, but positive. And so he's rolled this thing out. They're coming to us and say, listen, we want to move this Grenadian situation from where it is to and build a new reality for us to enjoy. We are human beings. Doc dealt with that a little earlier. A lot of us are going to want to gravitate towards that because we could smell the thing, we could sniff it. So that's my long response to your question.
Dr. Panchoo, your comments?
Well, I think people from either party will understand this, but people in the Grenadian political context always look forward to being led by a good leader. Eric Gary, Morris, Keith Mitchell, and now the resurgence of an NDC leader in the form of a youthful, intelligent, educated Deacon Mitchell. And there is no question that people see the vision with which they saw Dr. Mitchell in his youthful stage. When he spoke, people gravitated towards every word that he said. I sense that it is a similar feeling in the Grenadian context they have for Deacon.
Let me put this out again to you all. It is something that I ponder on a lot. A lot of times when we speak, especially in the context of politics, we speak a lot of the people, and the people want this, and the people don't want that, and the people want the other. But I want us to put in context here, in our construct here in Grenada, in the politics. When we speak of the people, who are we really talking about? Are we talking about the people who are opposed to the government in power, or are we talking about everyone? Mr. Joseph?
Well, every citizen of Grenada is entitled to something that the Constitution demands of the parliamentarians. That in passing laws for the peace, order, they must pass laws for the peace, order, and good government of Grenada. Yeah. So who are the beneficiaries? The beneficiaries must be all of us who are citizens of Grenada. And that is why some politicians in the campaign, when they are being cute and smart, would say that they will serve all the people. They understand it instinctively. But then, of course, when the power is in their hands and so on, then you get a more partisan allocation of the thing, and so that all the people are not really considered, or people are not considered in an equal manner. And you have more benefits going to some as against others. But we are all entitled under the supreme law of Grenada to good government, and they owe us that to the people as a people. Now, we allocate the constitutional power on the basis of elections. We are choosing. And so when you are choosing, you have two sides, at least two sides. You will have people, some Grenadian citizens going left and some going right. And so the thing plays out itself in that manner. But there's a point at which we have to reckon with the thing, and we go to the national anthem. And we get the mandate for national unity right there. Listen, we have an anthem that is perfectly crafted, you know. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know to what extent that our people really have given it attention. But it has some serious mandates in there, one of which is this whole question of national unity. And it has to be, I mentioned it at the top, one of the opportunities we have facing our nation through these elections would be to build the unity of the Grenadian people.
Dr. Panchoo?
Move on. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So let me just say this, Mr. Joseph. made a point there. You're actually coming around to where my thoughts are, in that when we get to election, yes, people split. So some go one way, the other go the other way. But let's put it this way. When for example, the NDC speaks of the people and what the people want, who are they really referring to? As compared to when the NNP speaks and they speaks of the people, who are the people they are referring to? In my humble opinion, that word, the people, in the context of politics, I mean, is extremely relative. The fact being that if we speak of the people, or we say that, and okay, so if I'm speaking, let's say, from an NDC perspective, and I say, listen, the people are tired with the present government and the people need change. And we've heard this being said election after election. But what happens in the past couple elections? The people keep voting the NNP back in power. And this is the context in which I'm speaking. Who really are the people? I mean, it's a case of we have a first past the post, the majority. So if we're saying that the people, and it may or may not, and I guess after election we may know, if we speak of the people are tired with this present administration, the people are not happy with the governance that they are getting, and all of that. And if it turns out after election that the NNP is re-elected, then who's the people? You know, isn't the people who voted them back in office? The majority, aren't they the ones, maybe, should I say, satisfied with the governance that they're getting? And so they've opted to re-elect the NNP back in office. I wonder if you're catching where I'm coming from.
Indeed I do. But let me say this to you in part. I mean, we talk about young people, but the youth population is not a homogeneous population. They are different kinds of young people.
I agree.
They're old people. So I don't know that we should struggle with that so much. Sections of the population are people. Majorities within the population and minorities within the population also constitute the people. So the people is the sum total of all of us citizens. And for purposes of voting and this and that and the other, one would find that groups of people gravitate left or right. So there is no oneness as such in relation to. But that does not mean that we could not establish national goals that all the people aspire towards achieving. All the people of Grenada would want to enjoy good health and the facilities and so on that would go with that. So I take the note that you make, but I don't think it should delay us for too long.
No. I just want to put it up because I mean we have a lot more things to talk about. I want to touch on the three classes of people you mentioned earlier, but we're going to take our final break. When we come back, I want us to talk about it. You mentioned the young people, the working class, and the middle class. I think this is very significant. So after the break, we'll come and we will talk a bit about that. So we'll be back in just a moment, folks.
You under pressure, you under stress, a lot of problem. They on your chest. You under pressure, you under stress, a lot of problem. They on your chest. Release it, release it.
When you need your prescription filled or you require non-prescribed medication, supplements, or all your personal needs, visit Gittins Healthcare at locations on Wall Street, Grandans, Victoria Street, Brandon, and Central Deputy Street, Guelph. Gittins Healthcare aims to provide an exceptional personalized pharmacy experience. Additionally, children under 5 and adults 55 years and over will enjoy 10% discount on purchases of $20 and over on prescription medication. Stop settling for less. Visit Gittins Healthcare, where your health is our priority. When a loved one passes on, we all need the comfort, support, and guidance of a trusted friend. You can rely on LaCour Brothers Funeral Home. We provide a personalized professional service that exceeds all expectations. Our dedicated staff responds to your every need with the greatest detail, ensuring affordability with a variety of options. Upgraded state-of-the-art facilities, spacious air-conditioned chapel with live internet streaming, a modern, environmentally safe crematorium, the only of its kind on island, private viewing spaces, large on-site repast center, a modern transportation fleet. Join our burial society today and make personalized arrangements for that final moment. As you prepare to enter your loved one into eternal rest, visit or call LaCour Brothers Funeral Home and select a package that brings added comfort to the entire family. LaCour Brothers Funeral Home and Burial Society, continuing a tradition of excellence.
Feel good facts.
Remember, if you have flu symptoms, do the right thing and stay at home to avoid giving it to others. Remember, you can be infectious up to a week after developing symptoms, so rest up and take it easy.
The stress, I love that problem. They on your chest, release it, 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 release it.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Release It. We're talking to Mr. William Joseph, and of course, Dr. Augustine Panchoo is with us. Dr. Panchoo, I want to come to you. In his very early in the program, Mr. Joseph made a reference to three classes of people: the young, working class, and middle class, that can definitely have some significant impact on what happens. I think more so in this election. How significant, and I want to start with the young people, how significant their role in this election, and I mean here going out to vote, can have on the outcome of this election? Either way.
Either way. Those three categories of people that Mr. Williams alluded to will make a difference in this election. In fact, they have always made a difference. And let me say this, they have made a difference in the last election, and I agree with him, by abstaining from voting. They made so that their absence from going to the voting, to the polling divisions to cast a ballot affected the way the outcome of the elections, and this time I believe it's going to play a significant role again. I believe that of course we have, and last week we talked about the different categories of voters that are out there for grabs, but I really do believe that our voting population is becoming wiser. They're looking for substance. They're looking for a way out. They're looking for betterment in their way of life. I think status quo promises are not relevant, become less relevant really. It's not are not relevant, but become less relevant to the young people of this country, to the middle class, the working adults, and the educated people, really. So when you look at all three categories of people that he has introduced tonight in our discussion, they are going to make a significant contribution, or they're going to sway this election either way, and it's very instructive, and parliamentarians and politicians politic in this election cycle need to pay particular attention to those groups of people. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mr. Joseph, your response to this?
Yeah, well, I believe that analysis is sound. I am encouraged with the way in which Doc has treated with this. Now, yeah, let me just footnote this thing regarding the workers. He's touched on the young people. No, the working people of Grenada, those people principally between, I would say, 30 up to about 55, definitely under 60. Significant chunk of the population involved in providing services and so on to all of us in various, whether in industry or in public service, as the case might be. The workers. And this election cycle meets the regime, the incumbent, with a problem on its hands. It is not in good standing with significant sections of the working people. It's not in good standing. It's a problem highlighted for us by the pension issue, but also by some other issues, the docking of pay of the teachers and so on. This whole question of saying, listen, I don't have money to pay $4 million, take bonds and so on, but you could spend $30 million in concrete drains, and you can do this and you do that while you're pretending that you don't have these monies. In other words, there has been a sort of punishment, a sort of grinding of significant sections of the working people, especially those in the public sector. And so that therefore, with the advent of the elections, the regime has a problem on its hands. And if our friend was here, I would say to him that unlike 2008, when people like our good friend had some degree of influence, he has no such influence now. So that you find the incumbent finds itself with no surrogates to make its case to the working people. And therefore, there is a real and very significant problem in terms of dominating the working class vote. I am not arguing that they won't get vote among workers. That would be foolish. But I do not, in terms of how I see it, I think they are in deficit when it comes to that for those reasons and more. And you add to that issues of cost of living, you add to that issues of the health situation and so on, and you get those things that impact working people, their ability or inability to own homes and to acquire this and that, and you have a problem on your hand. So that is the footnote I wanted to enter regarding the working class.
Okay, and in a little while we'll open our telephone lines and engage our viewers and listeners. But before we go there, I want to go back now to the numbers, Mr. Joseph and Dr. Panchoo. We're seeing some preliminary numbers, or a preliminary number of the latest voters list at what? 87,794 people registered to vote, as compared to 2018, 78,294, a difference of about 9,500, and that's an increase, all right, in the votes. NDC is at a deficit as it is, and I'm just saying that based on the last election of about 10,543 votes. Of course, people change, so I'm certain there may be people who probably felt, look, man, I supported the NNP. In fact, I've heard people say so at various meetings. I no longer support them. I now support the NDC. So we have movement, but on both sides. Yeah. That increase in the voter registration, if we have a large turnout, and I'm meaning larger than the last election, which was the valid votes cast in 2018 was about 57,364. So we had close to about 20,000 people, as you said, did not vote. We now have an increase. If we have a high voter turnout, let's say, for example, we have a voter turnout of, let's say, about 60,000 people. How would you analyze this? Do you think that would go in favor of the NDC or the NNP?
All right. So I have to be very careful on this one because I am not generally in the business of machining numbers. But I would say this, that the NDC catchment this election cycle I would argue, would consist of the following. About 15,000 who folded their arms last time. A significant number of the new voters, principally because they are young people. And then, of course, some numbers who move in. You got the anecdote from, we get it all the time, moving around, people who are saying, listen, I'm tired with this, I'm going to go and vote. I'm not going to vote NNP anymore, and so on. So the NDC catchment has grown significantly. We were talking theory here. Mm-hmm. The 15 or so thousand who did not vote the last time, because we argued, and I think correctly so, that those persons were not favoring the NNP. They would have gone out and voted if that was the case. You have this 7 or so thousand new voters, many of whom would be young people. And because of what we've seen, and which includes, and this is very important, something that I describe as a pairing between the young and youthful NDC leader and significant sections of the youth population. And that is where the magic is being produced on the NDC side. So there that, and then of course people who declare themselves to be tired with the regime and so on. And so I would argue, just on that mathematics, that you would have in excess of 20,000 voters who would now become available and are likely to so favor the NDC. The issue then becomes the distribution. Are they distributed over at least 8 constituencies so that it make a winning difference, or otherwise? Because the distribution factor is still very crucial, right? You don't want to get more and lose the elections. You want to get more distributed across at least 8 so that you win the elections. All right?
Dr. Panchoo?
Well, I don't know. I think Mr. Williams seemed to suggest that the NDC stands or is poised to capture a greater percentage of the youthful new registrants. I am not so sure that I buy that. No, he may be right. He may be right. But historically, I think for the last maybe 2 or 3 election cycles, there is evidence, ample evidence to suggest that the NNP has been able to capture, motivate the youthful population. Okay? So, but given that piece, we have to ask ourselves, an increase by 9,500 votes, new registrations, a greater turnout. That's a question I think I want us to kind of, to think about. An increase in voter turnout, historically, has it been more beneficial to the NNP or the NDC? And when we look at the stats, I think whenever there has been an increase in voter turnout, last election cycle, there was a reduction from 87% voter turnout in 2013 to 73% last election cycle. Now, if there is no question, I believe there is going to be a greater voter turnout this year. I put it in the 80s. 85% I am projecting. And I ask the question, whom will it favor? I believe it is going to favor the NNP.
There's also the notion, Mr. Joseph, and I'm coming to you, that young people tend to be very visible, very vocal, leading up to election. But on election day, many of them do not turn out to vote. Your thoughts, your take on this?
Yeah, yeah, we've heard of that, and some of us might well have witnessed that. But the broader issue has to do with context. The extent to which people of all ages, and in this context, especially young people, feel that they have a stake in the future of this country and that they must take a stand in order to begin to establish and to claim that stake. So we can't just argue it on the historical thing, this has turned out and this has turned out. We must take it in the context of this election cycle. What are the critical conditions prevailing that are likely to influence decision-making on the part of young people and others to go to vote? Now, if the several thousands additional voters must be young people primarily. So if they are willing, if they have gone ahead and registered, that is the first step. The question is whether either of the parties do their homework to convince and persuade these people, these young people, to get out and vote and facilitate that process on election day. Some people have argued that the NP has had a stronger on-the-day machinery and so on. I won't argue against that. But there's a lot of self-motivation taking place now. People are driving this thing. That's why I pointed to that turnout in Tempe last Friday. And when I said that the NDC's presentation on the vision and so on was positive, not perfect. If you, and they roll out of programs and so on over the last several weeks, I would put the same categorization on them. And yet you find what you found in Tempe on Sunday. So I say we are in the territory of the phenomenon and that these elections are going to be different. And I would say, for me, I wouldn't use past numbers and so on to predict or attempt to predict the outcome of these elections. I think the times have changed substantially.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure we're talking, not so much so numbers, but the patterns we're seeing, so if the pattern does not change, in this election cycle, we are likely to have a similar result. And mind you, I noted if it doesn't change.
So I hear you, and that's why I said context is everything. Mm-hmm. And I go further to say that there's every good reason why, in fact, the pattern will change. Right. That is my argument. Mm-hmm.
You also, and we're going to be going to the telephone line. In fact, I can probably have my producer put the telephone number up on the screen. The number is 440-1252. We'll be taking your calls in just a moment. Mr. Joseph, you spoke about, the NDC rolling out some of their programs and plans, and so one of them had to do with the payment of salaries over a 2-week period, fortnightly. In your mind, how feasible is that? Some years ago, the present Prime Minister did say he was going to look into the possibility of doing that. When it came up this time around, he did speak on it and said that they did look at it and it was not very feasible. It's a very complicated thing. And maybe, if one look at it, there's some work that has to be done in ensuring that happens. It clearly cannot happen, overnight. I'm wondering now, what is in the minds of the people as it relates to that? How do they see it?
Okay, a limited response to that question. Your TV station took its camera out. Was it your boy or the other station on the road and put this very question to people on the streets? And there was, in terms of the catchment on that occasion, there was overwhelming support for the fortnightly payment and so on. People saw it and said that it was going to be positive development. I don't know that it ranks among the primary selling points of the Congress. I don't know that it does. I am not myself settled on it. I do not believe that that it is going to make a difference as such in people's decision making regarding who to vote for. It is worthy of consideration for the reasons that they have given. The feasibility might turn out to be something else. And you know, this is an issue, as we talk about that we as a people need to be broad-minded about, that the politicians are going to say, as they have done over the years, we're going to say all sorts of things to us. And that, and subsequently in office, they find that they can't move on it. It cannot be done in the manner in which they thought it could be done. So it might be a function of the kinds of advice they receive, the thoroughness or otherwise with which they considered the issue. But people tend to, over the years, not just this cycle, put a number of things on the table, of course, with the intention of attracting support, but not everything has equal standing. And I do not believe, I think that there are some specific issues that will determine the voting decision by people, and not everything that is put out by the political parties.
Okay, thank you very much. So our telephone line is open. We have a caller on the line. Good evening, caller. Welcome to the program. Okay. Mr. Joseph and Dr. Panchoo, a lot of talk surrounds the work that is taking place now in Grenada. We're seeing a lot of work taking place. You made mention of some of them earlier on, concrete drains and a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of work taking place in Grenada. Of course, the opposition, election gimmicks and trying to win people with all of that. But my question to you, gentlemen, whether it's election gimmick or not, how will it influence the people who are benefiting in terms of where they would throw their support in this election cycle? Dr. Panchoo, you want to take this one first? Yeah.
Of course. You see the reward that people receive. Remember last week we introduced the egg for vote, honey for vote, chicken for vote. There is a recency, and the ruling party understands that there is the recency impact of benefits play into your mind when you go to the polls. Whether it is road work or getting your drain fixed, or we see a lot of paving of roads happening now, even on everything 7 days a week. It's happening. We see the distribution of lands, crown lands in St. Mark's, for example. So even though it's the election cycle, you see a lot of things are happening, and the recency, the impact of it is going to play maybe not a very significant role, but it is going to affect some people. Depending on the voter that we're looking at, they are going to remember how much they benefited from the last couple of weeks.
Mr. Joseph?
But of course, I agree with that entirely. We have a situation now in Grenada where it starts with big revenues. And there is no doubt that at the present time, the regime has been able to collect significant revenues, both from the traditional streams as a result of the taxation measures introduced in 2014. Significant millions were added to us that we should pay as taxes. So there's that revenue intake, and also the revenues deriving from the CBI program. So you have big revenues and big spending because the NNP brand is that. They are a spender brand, okay? A provider brand. Mm-hmm. So yes, people who are beneficiaries of that, obviously, in my view, it's a human thing, more than likely are going to stick. The question is not so much that, it's not limited to that. It is whether there is increase. In other words, do we have more beneficiaries or do we have a limited pool of beneficiaries? In other words, I'm spending $30 million more, but it's the same 10 people who are getting it. Again, the last time. Yeah. We can't answer that here, but I'm just throwing it out to show you that the distribution becomes a factor. And then also there are folks who will say, you can give me gold to walk on, but I still wouldn't vote for you. Why? Because people vote for different reasons. Some people vote for bread. Some people vote for something else or some other things. So yes, on the face of it, some people are made happy. They want to show gratitude and so on. They believe that would continue, and they would continue to enjoy that kind of bonanza earnings, and so they will say, "Let me stick with it." Mm-hmm. And there are other people who will say, "Notwithstanding this spend and so on, I find you in the making of my judgment. I find that you are guilty on some other grounds, and therefore I wouldn't stand with you." And then the last point to be made is this. The extent to which people, let's just say some people, we always have to say that, the fallacy of all and some, we must be mindful of that. The extent to which some people would be prepared to make decisions that are not, in a sense, predictable. You have voters like that. Mm-hmm. They say, "Watch, don't bank on my vote. Don't think that because you give me this and you give me that, you have my vote." So there's a mixed bag of reasons. That's what I'm trying to argue as to why people vote the way they do. But I take it that people who receive bonanza income and so on are more than likely to want to show gratitude to the provider. Mm-hmm. The challenger must now present a program that gives some assurance of continued buoyancy, in this case in the construction sector. Because that you have a lot of workers involved there, and they would want to know, for example, they want to know whether you continue with CBI. In the same way that folks want to know whether you continue with the money, in the same way, some people want to know whether you're going to have CBI because they understand that there's revenues coming and you're going to spend it, hopefully constructively. So it's a mixed bag.
Okay, thank you. So let's go back to our telephone line. Good evening, caller.
Good evening to you and to the panel.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
The question is for Dr. Panchoo. Dr. Panchoo, from what you've seen emerging with Deacon Mitchell of the NDC, how do you assess his leadership qualities? And what type of prime minister do you think he's going to make? Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
There is going to be a lot of presumption on my part to be able to do either of the two. One, leadership qualities, I don't know that I'm in a position to assess his leadership qualities because he's just been nominated, elected, the leader of his party. He has done some things in maybe in maneuvering and helping to set the tone for the party in the selection of the candidates. But I don't know that any one of us is in a position to evaluate his leadership skills. And then the second piece of the question you asked me, certainly I don't think any one of us, not even him, is able to judge his leadership as a prime minister. He has not even won his parliamentary seat. He has not even been elected to parliament as yet. So this is a very premature speculation on my part if I were to indulge in answering the question, sir.
Okay, thank you. We have another call online. Good evening, caller.
Yes, good evening,
welcome.
Citizen Augustine, and greetings to your guests there, Dr. Panchoo and Mr. Joseph. Listen, very interesting conversation, I must indeed say. I really do laud and applaud you gentlemen on the comments made. But to you, Godfrey, I'd like to say this. I heard you made a statement there briefly, that in politics, the word people is relative. This is erroneous. You see, politics, the foundation, the base of politics, true politics, is the people. But Mr. Joseph just correctly said it. We have to differentiate when we speak between all the people and some of the people. Just a couple of seconds ago he said it, and that's the interesting evaluation of this. Elections, as they are, extremely adversarial. And in the process, people take different directions. But it happens. One of the curses of this here country is at the end of the election, after the decisions have been made, the side who wins takes over and satisfies their need and the needs of those who voted for them, violating the rights of others. And this is one of the basic things we have to change in this here country. That's just an observation. Now the question is to Mr. Panchoo. Mr. Panchoo, people make decisions by two ways, basically. My understanding, I am not very scientific on this, I must say, just because I've read in the past couple of things. With the brain, and then what is considered in certain circles to be out of brain resources. In other words, those who make decisions with their brain think. First, they gain information, they develop the knowledge, they evaluate critical thinking, and they make decisions based on information. In other words, they make informed decisions. But those who make decisions based on what considered to be out of brain resources from their bodies outwards, and what appears and what is provided to them and otherwise. Now the question is, outside of the principal decision making via general elections in Grenada, has any study or have any studies been made within Grenada to understand the percentages of our people who think in these two varying ways? It may be a sort of in-depth question, but if you don't have the answer now, don't force yourself, but you may give it some consideration later. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, caller. Dr. Panchoo.
Thank you, citizen. I cannot point to any established research that has been done to ascertain whether or not the percentage of people who make emotional decisions and or well-informed decisions. But let me add this piece though. Yes, there are people who, when they go to the polls or prior going to the polls, they will weigh the manifestos, what people have been saying, plans, projections of either party, and then make a well-informed choice about who it is that they want to represent them in the parliament of this country. And then there are people who are just going on the whim and fancy of the music, of the food, of the color, of the people. You may just like a person and that spur you. So that's the kind of emotional connection that spur people to vote. So people vote, yes, well informed, and other people go on the emotional substance or lack of substance and to cast their ballot.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another caller. Good evening, caller.
Good evening to you, Godfrey, and your panel. And first, I must say I'd like to take my hats off to Mr. Joseph. You know, I really like your style, the way you express yourself, your views, and your body language. You know, it's very refreshing. And I like clear, and precise, constructive criticism, and I think you're pretty good at that. My question to you, sir, we have a situation in Grenada with our work ethics, and I'm not sure, and I honestly cannot say if I've heard it from either of the parties, if any one of them have done anything to improve on the standard of wages in Grenada. And also, do you think this has to do with our work ethics in the general atmosphere of Grenada? You know, it's something that bothers me, and I ask, and even some of the politicians and other people would make, you know, comments about it. And I, for one, would like to say, I believe nobody have done it or take it on seriously, and that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. Mr. Joseph.
Well, it's a very interesting question, and it ties into two threads. One is, as citizens, what we believe in, and it applies to leaders also, the character stuff and what we believe. And then the specialists would talk about our socialization, that our young were socialized about the dignity and value of work 30 and 40 years ago, and there's a concern now that perhaps that socialization is no longer there, or not as deeply, and it's not moving from generation to generation. And so it's going to cause us problems in terms of worker productivity and so on. So we have that to wrestle with. How we organize ourselves as a society to produce the goods and services that we need to enable us to live the better life, to earn and to live the better life that we aspire towards.
Okay, thank you very much. Caller, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Release it. Okay, yeah. I just want to release it. You know, it's the way politicians behave in Grenada. I'm from the south of the country. I'm from the south of the country. And I remember a few years ago, a politician came in there and conquered the road. And she picks up the telephone and she called everybody in the area and she said to them, when she called my phone, I picked up the phone and she said, hey, you see, I fixed your road. And so you have to vote for me. And I find this is so disrespectful. And so that, you know, I find politicians should be more educated than that. So I said to her, ma'am, you could give us a gold road and we don't want to vote for you. We are not going to vote for you. Because as for me, I look at the economy, not the road. Come on. You know, and it's the same thing. I live in the south and it's the same thing. And I look at what happens even in the south now. And there is so much road is going on. There is so much road is going on. But for more than 10 years, nobody fixed the road. So why are you fixing it now? Because you want to vote? You must treat the citizen of Grenada better than that. I mean, why is the older folks going to take that from you? But our children, we stay without food and we send them to college and everything. We educating them. And this is what you're offering them? You know, this is what I want to release.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, the telephone number, it's on the screen, folks, 440-1252. Gentlemen, just a word on the campaign. You know, I've experienced quite a number of elections, and in recent times we've had some campaigns that personally I'm not very proud of. However, so far in this campaign, it seemed to be going okay. We have not heard a lot of mudslinging. We are seeing some antics, yes indeed, a lot of entertainment, some antics. But as for the heavy mudslinging, we are not seeing that. Mr. Joseph, do you agree with me on that?
Yes, and it's it's good relief. And I also agree with you that we've had some comic relief going on also. So it goes in the territory. I think, but it's good, I think, that we could move away from the ugliness that seemed to characterize us over a long period of time. We really don't need that stuff, right? And if they consciously have come to the point, the politicians in the campaigns, that the thing is really worthless, and so they must drop it, then that is fine. That is fine. But you know, the campaign is a very unique instrument in the politics. Very, very unique, and it throws up all kinds of things, some of which are unpredictable. But principally, there is the substance and there is the buzz. The buzz, the energy, the mood, the excitement. And we're getting it. You listen to some of the campaign soca music and so on. Very, very lively stuff. That's good. You know, you get the supporters animated and in a mood where, you know, so their buzz is always critical. I think though that in the last couple of days, we've begun to see a shift in the propaganda, in the approach to the propaganda, and there is some amount of counterintelligence stuff now beginning to roll out. It is suggesting something, right? Because that is the worst aspect of trickery that we could have in the campaign, where people are seeking to plant things on others so as to suppress their votes or to reduce it. You see, and so we have it has surfaced now, and hopefully, you know, if it is called out early enough, people might desist from that kind of practice. But it does show, to my mind, a degree of desperation and so on, or otherwise that people don't have the force of argument to put forward. And so if you believe that you're losing the propaganda war, because in this piece, especially the use of social media, listen, man, there's hardly anything that comes out of the NNP, for example, that the machinery in the NDC does not pounce on. Mm-hmm. And we talked at the top of the program about the backlash on slogans and so on. This thing is one of the significant aspects of this cycle, the extent to which social media is used to get messages across, to promote, to defend, to deflect, and so on and so on. And so it genuinely takes the fight to the other side. And that is good, and it is fairly safe. So I like that. I like that.
Okay. We have another caller online. Caller, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, go ahead, caller. We hear you. Mm-hmm.
Right. I want to say to the public, there's a lot of things that I have in me to say, but I don't mean I could say it right now. But whatever I'm going to say now, I want everybody to hear and to look into it. Now, all the people who vote in NNP, they is voting against themselves, their children, their grandchildren, themselves, their children, their grandchildren, and the country as a whole. I can prove it to them in many different ways. Because in the first place, why kids should go and campaign in secret behind Mr. Blair's back for leadership? And no one never look into that to say, well, why he must come in secret and he don't come in public. And this thing growing, and he feel to himself that he is so intelligent that he could emphasize on people fail to understand that he teaching themselves, but a lot of us don't learn. And I can afford to say the reason why he went on campaign in secret behind Mr. Blair's back for leadership, it is because he see how stupid it was with Gary. So he figured it's an opportunity for him to make money for them, for us. So in that respect, he campaigned in secret, they support him, and today all of us is paying the penalty. Now I want to say in that respect, what is it wrong that Mr. Blaise had done? Mr. Blaise had done ever so much that they never look into it. He put telephone by the roadside. He exercised in Grenlet. And look, there are plenty things that I can say, but I cannot continue now. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. Thanks a lot indeed. All right. The telephone number 440-1252. Very interesting.
You know, while you wait on the next caller, deep waters on this one. I remember Uncle Gary faced with the challenge of the young guys in 1970s, the early 70s. This infamous statement, Uncle Gary, they come hot and sweaty, shouting power.
Yes, indeed.
Godfrey, you are too young to know that. You know, so I'm giving you that free.
No.
You know, I go to it because there is something, he was wrong. He was mistaken in his treatment to the challenge. And I have reflected on that in the last 6 months and said, you know, boy, I think Keith has made a mistake in how he handled his Deacon coming. And he has in fact helped to popularize this guy. He has helped unwittingly perhaps to grow the appetite for Deacon Mitchell. And so he has a problem on his hands. It tells us that when you're involved in this thing, you don't jump at the throat because you have the ability to jump at it. There is this thing called judgment and weighing the thing, right? And showing consideration for the factors involved, right? And so it's an external benefit that I think the NDC has received. The extent to which, the way in which Dr. Mitchell treated the Deacon entry into the politics that has backfired is essentially because it helped to grow the appetite for this young man.
Okay, we have a caller. Good evening, caller.
Caller, good evening to you, sir.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Panelist. Good night. I only want to let them know that all the other politicians all over the north, south, east, and west, everybody is looking for 5 more years to do what they have to do. I'm waiting for the candidate for St. George is to say he wants 5 more years to finish the market.
Okay, thank you, caller. Yeah, Mr. Joseph, I just want to throw in something here. You know, in instances like this, you know, maybe in election, a situation that requires support. I think there are 2 factors that, and a very important one that has to be considered is one, keeping what you have and trying to gain more. And it would be very important to keep what you have. You know, if you're in a situation where, or not if you're in a situation, or when you're trying to get more. So I'll just leave it at that. I think you understand. I'm sure you understand. But it's very, very important to keep what you have. You know, there's a saying: a bird in one hand is better than what? 2
Yeah,
in the bush.
the base. You must secure the base.
Let's go back to the telephone. Good evening, caller.
but you must grow.
Yes.
Yeah. That is the thing. Yeah. You must secure the base, but you must grow. And so the challenge is, how do you get that growth?
Well, I agree with you. I'm with you there. I'm just saying that the first and, in my opinion, the first and most important thing is keeping what you have.
Yeah.
Because that in a sense can speak volume. I mean, you know, if we put into context here, I think we would have to agree that the NNP has a larger support base than the NDC, and so this is not something that you want to risk, losing your base, and so it is important to keep that base in place, and then you start the process of building. Caller, good evening.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yes, sir.
The declaration of asset for people that put themselves up for public scrutiny for public positions. I know they didn't have it in the last election in 2013, 2018, but it was there in 2013. And it doesn't seem that we'll have it this year. Doesn't that apply anymore?
I know it was around. I have not heard anything about it. I really couldn't. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it. Election has been announced. Election is what, a couple of weeks away, and
21 days.
Yeah, I've heard nothing about it. So maybe not.
But that is always a given in every election cycle. The fact that nobody has talked about it in this current cycle doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I think it is always a part of openness and declaration, and is good for fiduciary reason. In other words, we know why it is done. Mr. Joseph, you're better at that than Godfrey and myself.
Of course, he's a political analyst.
He is. You give me too much credit. You give me too much credit. But no, I don't think. I think perhaps it is desirable. One might argue that for statutory declarations to be made, which means that there would have to be a piece of legislation that imposes that requirement. I think. Or anything resemblant in the past, it was through the kind offices of the civil society, I think, who encouraged the politicians to do that, and there was some agreement to do so. So it remained, in a sense, discretionary, and that's why perhaps we have not had it. It has not come up as an issue this time. But it's one of those things as we seek to refine our democracy that we need to pay some attention to, because the general issue surrounds or feeds into this notion of corruption and the gathering of ill-gotten resources and so on. But let me leave it at that point.
Okay, so we have a final caller on the line. Good evening, caller.
Hello, good evening.
Yes.
No, this is my very first. Yes, good evening. I'm hearing you.
Yes, hello, go ahead, please.
This is my very first time. I turned 65 years today, and this is my very first time I ever called into a program. Yeah. Listen to this. Mr. Joseph, I want to commend you for your pragmatism this evening during this discourse. Number two, if anyone thinks that these elections, this cycle is a walk in the park, they are making a dreaded mistake. This election is an open election, is a tight election, and anybody who's trying to make predictions, they're out of line. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, caller. And of course, that was our final call. Yeah. I would have to agree with the caller. I think it's going to be a very close one. Yeah. And people just need to do, well, the politicians need to go out there. They have 21 days, go out there and do what you need to do, and then the rest to the voters on election day. Yeah. Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much, but let me just give you at least 30 seconds to make some closing remarks. Mr. Joseph, let me start with you.
Well, and so I thank you for the opportunity, and I thank you for the additional opportunity to sit at the feet of my friend Dr. Panchoo. And I thank the viewers and listeners who've called in to share their views. It's important, I think, for us as citizens to share in our learning on these things in the hope of helping some of our fellow citizens to understand some of these issues, because there's nothing to lose by gaining an understanding of what is around us. And I end where I began, that these elections provide an opportunity for us to address some serious and important national issues. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but we reckon with the state of poverty in Grenada. That is something that no Grenadian can be comfortable about. And it is not about a village X or village Y. It is widespread. It is a national issue. And it's going to cripple our nation, because it's going to deny us of skills and so on that we need for our development. So let's hope that going forward, the politicians in government embark upon serious programs to deal with this question of poverty at least. And my last word would be to say that we also have the opportunity to, I think, put ourselves in a position to make a better and more constructive go at our next 50 years of independence. We have this opportunity. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph. Dr. Panchoo,
well, I think I must express how happy I am to be able to appear on the same platform as Mr. William Joseph. You know, he is distinguished in Grenada. He has served our country and served it well. And he continues to do so. Very critical and analytic. 21 days from now, Grenadians go to the polls, and you have one party that says, let's move Grenada forward. And the other say, we're doing it in safer hands. The proverbial question is asked, where did they? And the response is, I've always been here. I agree with Mr. Joseph. This election cycle is going to be a tight one. It is not a walk in the park, according to one of the callers. Grenadians will decide whether it's one for the road or a new vanguard. 21 days will determine where people place their votes. It's about our future, and it's about the choices that we make. And we're trusting that Grenadians know best. They know best, and they will make their choice. And we will live by that choice. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Panchoo. Thank you, Mr. Joseph. I really appreciate you accepting the invitation to be on the program with me this evening. You know, as always, you've provided great insight, great knowledge, and you know, from the comments that we've heard and that we've seen on our Facebook page and social media platform, your comments and your contribution this evening was highly regarded. I thank you very much, and I look forward to having you again pretty soon on the program. Dr. Panchoo, thank you as well. Folks, we thank you for your contributions, your calls. We thank you very much, and we look forward to having you back next Thursday for another edition. I just want to remind folks, and join with Dr. Panchoo and Mr. Joseph, you have an opportunity on June 23rd to make a decision that can influence the course of your life. Let's use that decision wisely. Think about it carefully, and so when you make that decision, you will feel satisfied that you have done the right thing, and of course you're doing it in the interest of you, your family, and Grenada on the whole. Thank you very much. Do have a good night. We'll see you next Thursday evening.